Okay.
It's the 79th episode of SETI BIMCO and the 29th of SETI BIMCO Part 2, The Revenge. And this month, this is the end of Spider Month.
No.
Later
Are
this
we
hour.
sure about that?
Yeah. Later this hour, we're going to recreate revenge sequels to the episode of the 1970s Spider-Man show called Curse of Rava. And that's it.
All right.
Because it's Halloween time.
Also, and what I'm happy to report is there's still enough Spider-Man episodes that exist that we could do a Spider Month again in the future.
We can.
And then, there's the cartoons, the movies.
Also,
I'll just read comic books.
This hour, we'll also answer the age-old question. Did Thomas Jefferson ever get revenge on the rest of the Founding Fathers for making him handwrite the Declaration of Independence rather than getting that guy a typewriter? Okay.
I think it's interesting that you're siding with, of all the Founding Fathers, you're siding with Thomas Jefferson.
It's SETI BIMCO Part 2, The Revenge. The show where we create revenge sequels that nobody wanted.
Yeah.
It's SETI BIMCO Part 2, The Revenge.
You already said that.
This is after the song thing. And we got to pick a wild card question because people...
All right, yeah.
After we talk about it, Revenge of Rava, we're going to ask who from that episode, that TV show, would be most likely to, and I picked a number from a jar. This week, most likely to find dead hippies in their outhouse. Who is most likely to find dead hippies in their outhouse? These questions, again, have nothing to do with the Boggy Creek universe. Did you write that down?
Yeah. I feel like watching Boggy Creek and its sequel was a real transformative experience for you. Like,
it was.
There's definitely going to be a period, like there's, SETI BIMCO pre-Boggy Creek and post-Boggy Creek. Like, it just colors you the perceptions of your world.
It does. Everybody. Watch them. Check out those episodes. They're highly rated. Highly downloaded, I should say.
That's awesome. So let's talk about in episodes past.
Are you going straight? Are you going straight to Spider episodes?
I am not. No, I'm not talking Spider-Man. I'm trying not to talk about Spider-Man at all. Really? That is I'm going to try not to say that name the entire episode. We'll see how long that lasts. Well, instead, I'm going to bring back a different feature that we haven't had for a while.
No, it's
what outrages me this week. So Tim and I, as neighbors, we actually frequently will fraternize outside of the podcast.
Yeah, sometimes.
We could walk to each other's house. He brings it down to sometimes. As of this recording, this past weekend, I had one of my fabled movie nights in my Brooklyn backyard.
Mm-hmm.
We broadcast a movie. We invite over a wide assortment of people from all different groups of my friendhoods, make them all interact. They all hate each other. It's awesome. And there was an outrageous event that happened at this movie. The movie this week, this time, it's not a weekly thing, was the original Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg. A movie definitely too good to be a SETI BIMCO movie. And while picking myself out of the refuse and all the spilled stuff and food leftovers and all the stuff, throwing these things, it's a big deal. We have themed menus. We cook chicken and eggs and stuff because dinosaurs.
I feel bad because I just rushed out of there. I'm like, well, this is a mess I got to pick up. Bye.
Yeah, you kind of Irish goodbye, but not really. Like, you've learned your lesson.
I have a dog at home.
Yeah, that's always your excuse. But upon the next day, opening my freezer, there was a little tiny velociraptor stuck in one of my ice cubes.
Was it stuck?
It was partially frozen in.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'm outraged as somebody. There was no reason to go into my freezer. We had ice cube. And this person, I should say, I have strong reasons to suspect the person who put this velociraptor in my freezer is none other than my co-host, Tim Hamilton.
And you're outraged that I gave you a dinosaur?
I don't know where that dinosaur has been.
Well, don't eat that ice cube.
Well,
give that to the cats to play with. It's too late.
No, what? Yeah, I ate the ice cube, of course.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So what do I have? Do I have the herps? Scoots?
No.
But was it you, Tim? I'm putting you in the hot seat. Was it, in fact, you who was responsible for the velociraptor
I'll
in my
say
icebox?
It's me. I'll even say there are two other ongoing pranks that you have never found, or you're playing the long game and you found them And you're planning some long game against me. But there's two things you've never mentioned. I'm like, when is George gonna?
Oh no!
And I'm like,
we should mention for many years, Tim, when you come to my house, would hide this weird book on cosplay.
Yes, photograph.
It was a very strange book. It was made of foam rubber, and it was like photos of just not like a wide assortment of cosplayers, like maybe like 10 different cosplayers in this bunch of different costumes.
Yes.
It was such an odd book, and it was just like, as I was preparing to move house, I was like, what is this fucking book? And how does it end up here? And I realized Tim. And I ended that one really well.
I even wrote in it because it was signed to you from somebody.
Wait.
I wrote over the letters that looked like somebody had signed it to George.
Oh, yeah, you made it look like it was signed to me.
It was signed to somebody else, not to me. It wasn't my book.
Yeah. Sure it wasn't, Tim. It was odd. And like, in case you're somebody at home being like, maybe it's one of those spicy cosplay books. No.
Not really.
I didn't recognize a single character that they were cosplay. It was almost like they were doing like generic copyright-free cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, I'm a vaguely anime-inspired character, but no specific anime because that would break copyright law.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Well,
So, Tim, if you ever invite Tim to your house, understand that he will hide toys and books and stuff in your house.
Just
if you're anything like my house, there's a lot of stuff. If he uses your bathroom,
come on.
you've heard episodes. There's going to be something. He's going to blame it on a cat or another kid or like a random passing hobo, but your bathroom's going to take a hit.
In the late 80s, I went to a friend's party, and he was a collector, kind of like you, except he collected Star Trek stuff. So he had
that's sadder.
Bridge of Enterprise and the control bridge of Deep Space Nine. And he had all the characters, and they were in each of their sets. And at the party, I was like, I'm going to put Star Trek people in the Deep Space Nine set, and I'm going to put the Deep Space Nine people in this Next Generation set. And I thought he'll be amused by this. And later when he saw it, he was not amused. He was like,
really?
Yeah.
Explain for those of us who are not as well versed in things Trek. Is that egregious?
I don't know.
That's unforgivable.
He wouldn't care. I mean, maybe he spent 2 hours placing them exactly where they needed to go, and
maybe
Picard's hand in that exact engage position, and I was unaware. I don't know. I mean, not mad forever, but I noticed at that moment, he's not amused.
It was like the two bridges were sacrosanct. You don't. He made it just so. Yes. I know a little Trek. Honestly, the revenge article you sent this time, I couldn't read it.
You couldn't read it? There's not much
Jackie
to read.
Onassis. It was just like
Jackie.
The revenge was like Jackie Onassis and her sister like
I didn't know this.
on each other's husbands. I didn't know it. I didn't care. I'm just like, yawn. I just couldn't bring myself to bring it. I tried twice.
Well, now you've mentioned it. For those people
we'll cut this out.
who listen in other countries, they're going to cut this out.
For people who listen to other countries that were born before 1963,
slept with JFK, her husband. That's how competitive they were. I know, but your sister. Come on.
Was it after they were married?
Yeah. So Jackie stole away Onassis, who her sister was in love with.
Oh.
That's quite a revenge tale.
And Jackie's sister was last seen in a grassy knoll.
Jesus. Yeah.
Right?
I think so. Right.
And she
right.
fucking murdered JFK.
I like to look up some fun revenge stories to share here. And you know what happens? I try to type in revenge. It's always woman murders husband to get revenge. Husband murders woman to get revenge. Husband murders girlfriend to get revenge. I'm like, I really have to dig.
Problem with revenge.
I really have to dig hard to find anything heartwarming
outside of our revenge-themed
heartwarming
podcast.
Revenges.
Yeah, revenge is often. It's not just a dish best served cold. It's often ugly and sordid and depressing.
It is,
and that's why Seti Bimco 2, The Revenge, is such a bright light in the podcasting landscape because we bring a little extra touch.
A little extra touch, true.
Yeah, our revenge stories guaranteed to delight or mildly amuse or slightly perturb.
This one bored
or just
you.
Annoy you.
This one bored you.
The episode?
The story.
I couldn't read that.
I will tell you something that made me feel really bad about myself.
Uh-oh, what?
If I can tell the story and make it not a super long story.
Okay.
My wife and I were eating outside here in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is lousy with restaurants that you can sit outside at,
Yeah.
for those that don't know. And there was like a homeless guy who was a little drunk or maybe smoked some pot. I don't know. He was walking around. He had a package of hot dogs. That's what he was eating. We sat outside. No one else was around. And I saw him looking at us. I'm like, I think he's going to come have a conversation. We had our dog with us. But he sat right down at the next table and offered us a hot dog. And we're like, no, it's okay. We don't need a hot dog, thanks. So he wanted some water. So we gave him, they give you a jug of water, and I gave him water.
Yeah.
And then the people in the restaurant came out, and they didn't want to be mean to him. They just said, you can go sit down at the other table, if he's bothering you. And we sat at the other table. But here's where I felt bad, because he came over again, broke off part of that hot dog from his package, and I don't know where he got it from, and threw it down. He's like, maybe your dog will want this hot dog. And Soul sniffed it, pushed it around. And I was like, Then the thought I feel bad about is, I don't know where you got those hot dogs, where they come from, but that food you're eating is not good enough for my dog. I'm worried where those hot dogs have been. Don't know if my dog's going to get sick.
Was this in our current heat?
This was just 2 weeks ago. I'm remembering it. So I did kick the hot dog away. And again, they gave him water and let him sit at another table. They're like, you can sit here till people come, which was nice of them. I don't know. Maybe they know.
It is nice of them.
Maybe they know him. He was just kind of high. Because I heard him say, hey, dog want. That's all the word I could hear. And also, he offered us a hot dog. But he did talk with us, and I don't know what he was talking with us about.
That sounds, I have sympathy for his plight. Mm-hmm. That sounds excruciating.
But I feel bad. No, your food. Not good enough for my dog.
Because the guy's just carrying around with the hot dog. You don't know where you don't know where the hot dog's been. You don't know where that hot dog's going. Never, any man who carries around a pack of hot dogs, that is a man capable of anything. Remember when Joey Chestnut, the guy who wins the hot dog eating contest at Nathan's every year, somebody rushed the stage while he's eating hot dogs and he choked the guy out?
Yes.
So I assume if you eat hot dogs, violence rests right beneath the surface, and you're just ready to explode at any second.
It's all those chemicals.
There's no chemicals in hot dogs. Stop believing the gummy.
Do you remember the first time you ate a hot dog?
No.
I do.
I was probably an infant. You do?
Because my parents cut it off cold, and I ate it. I was like, this is good, but leaves a film on your tongue if you eat it cold. It's like, yuck.
What do you mean they cut it off cold? Was it actually sold in a chain, like the way you see in cartoons?
No, they just cut up a hot dog, but it was cold, I remember. Hot dogs are cooked, and then you let them cool off.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that, hot dogs are not served raw. They've already been cooked, but...
You remember the first time you tasted salt and pepper?
No.
I do that too. I do remember.
Tim, this is such an interesting glimpse into your childhood that you were old enough to remember your first hot dog, and it was served to you cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine you were standing over a dirty sink as you ate it. Am I right?
Under the kitchen table.
Under the table. Okay. And were you surrounded by rats and they had the advantage of numbers?
Yes,
or okay. All right. We're bringing a weird energy to this episode of Sadie Bimco.
Well, maybe we should get to the episode. It's been 60 minutes. Did you pick it? You picked this.
I did, actually. You're right. So I guess I'll
lead the way.
All right. So it is finishing up the fourth week of the Amazing Spider-Man. Well, no, Spider Month. We're watching the Amazing Spider-Man TV show that aired on CBS, I want to say, from
77 to 79, I think it said, or 78.
Really? Was that late?
On and off.
Okay.
Just I remember I missed a lot because it wasn't a regular show.
Yeah. Apparently very highly rated. We watched this. Yeah, it was just very expensive. We watched this before as when I was a guest star. I really liked it. Now I've seen more of it. It's been hit or miss. I would say this episode, The Curse of Rava, was better. I
said it was the best one.
Yeah.
They did spend a lot of money on this one, as we'll get to.
Yeah, a lot of stunts. This episode, The Curse of Rava, opens, as so many episodes do, with a shot of a placard on a building that reads Bolt Museum.
Bolt? Was it Bolt? I missed the name of the museum.
Isn't that odd? Bolt? I'm like, what is it?
Someplace in LA. I guess.
Yeah.
It looked like
Yeah. Because this show, very famously set in New York, almost exclusively filmed in LA, and there's always excuses as to why you're not seeing him in skyscrapers. Like this one takes a lot at a museum and a campus. And
we'll say it's Queens.
They say it's Queens.
What?
I'm trying to remember.
I derailed you. It doesn't start with the museum and the statue of Rava, right? Is that what you're trying to remember?
Yeah, and it's just the guy is talking. Like there's the blue-eyed guy, Mandak, who we don't learn his name yet, but he's like, and he's doing this kind of weird accent, which sounds vaguely Middle Eastern.
He's from Kalistani, George. He's
from Khalistan, which
your country
actually turns out is a real term.
Is it? You mean a real country?
No, it's not a real place.
Oh.
Khalistan, spelt with a KH, is actually some sort of Sikh movement, like an attempt. But let's cut this part out. We don't want to get real politics. Cut out.
No.
All right. So it's the fictional country Khalistan.
It is fictional.
And yeah. And there is the museum is doing an exhibit based on the art of Khalistan, and they have a cult statue of their god of death named Rava, also a fictional god. And this guy Mandak's like, you need to give it back to our people. It's a cultural relic.
Yeah.
And the museum guy's like, no, fuck you. It's the museum's.
His name is Rastin. Professor Rastin.
Okay.
This is kind of ahead of its time, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's very much like the London Museum, like the way they stole the Elgin marbles and stuff from Athens. But unlike how we tend to look at repatriation of artifacts nowadays,
yes,
I think Mandak's the bad guy here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on Mandak's side, but we'll get to that. And
you think Mandak is the good guy? You said bad guy. You're on his side.
I think they're putting Mandak as a bad guy. I think he had a good point.
Until later, but yeah.
Until later, yeah. And does anything happen at this point? My notes are incomplete, and I can't remember.
Really? He gets angry at Professor Rastin, and he makes a scimitar fly across the room into the wall because Mandak seems to have telepathic powers. A true
telekinetic powers.
Supervillain, telekinetic.
Come on, telekinetic.
What'd I say?
You said telepathic.
Oh, yeah, they're telepathic too.
Yeah, they actually, and they also weirdly mentioned teleportation at one point. I'm like, he's not done any teleportation. I don't want to mention this.
And there's a woman watching from the upstairs stairway.
Yes, and that's what I have decided is our babe of the week, because I'm realizing that every single week on this show, there would be a new, very attractive woman for Peter to vaguely interact with in a way that's almost always completely non-sexual. Although he did definitely bang that lady in that one two-parter episode.
Right.
And her name is Trina Pandit.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter's very flirty with her. He actually has some game. I was like, wow, Peter, you're a lot more suave than we normally see you.
Yep.
And while he's talking to her he's taking photos and stuff, there is a protest by different Khalistanis who run the gamut from people who look like they're of Indian descent or, Middle Eastern descent to just straight up white folks are out there protesting to return these artifacts. Again, I'm on their side.
On their side.
Yeah, it seems like you should. Hey, they think this is their literal god.
Because give it back. The white police officer that I think we're supposed to like, he's like, I can't understand why anybody worship that ugly thing.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a real mark of how things have changed. So we're definitely meant to side with the people who we know are the good guys because they're recurring characters on the show.
Yeah,
but they're kind of dicks, real cultural elitist dicks.
Yeah, Peter's like, yeah, I worship Farrah Fawcett.
And he's like, I have a poster in my room. It's really her. I talk to it every night. So Peter's spider sense goes off because if you were new to the show and new to the concept of Spider-Man, he's actually Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And in this show, his spider sense, we mock it because instead of warning him of imminent danger, it does whatever it needs to move the plot forward. He's able to sense that there's going to be a riot.
And it starts for no reason. Could you see? Did I look away?
Well, here's what I think happened. Mandak walks through the crowd and he goes, Khalistan, Khalistan, Khalistan to a bunch of people.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I think it's not clear and they never really say it. I think he does something to their brains. Because like you said, they specifically say he has telekinesis, but even the scriptwriters seem to be a little confused. He definitely does brain stuff at times where he changes people's wills.
I thought a bee stung that girl. That's what I thought happened. So
what?
they do start
A bee stung
protesting.
wait. You thought it started because of a bee?
Yes.
Tell me more about this. Which girl?
She had a sign.
Did
She
it-
had blonde hair and had a headband. Did you see
And
her?
she says, no bees on me, that one?
Yes.
And she got stung. She said, I said one thing. And then she went nuts.
She had a shirt with Ziggy on it. Said,
Ziggy, wow. Tom Wilson's own Ziggy,
Have a nice
comic
day.
star of the 70s. And he said Mondays. And like that's such a
Yes.
Garfield thing to say, but it's before Garfield. Garfield,
Right.
everybody stole Ziggy's shtick.
it did.
So anyway, suddenly there's a protest with like all the people. No, a riot. The
A riot.
protesters storm the museum.
They don't get
Peter,
in. They're just throwing things.
no, but they are like they're breaking windows.
They are.
It
It's
looked
true.
like it looked like the Capitol riot.
It's January
honestly.
6th, yes.
Yeah, it was January 6th. Peter changes into Spider-Man with his great costume. They're literally throwing cabbage at him. I'm
I
like,
know.
who
Where
thought
did you get cabbage?
to bring cabbage to this? That actually, Tim,
Maybe-
that would seem to indicate that they were planning on rioting. 'Cause
Maybe
you
that's
don't just carry around cabbage.
Maybe it's a Calistani staple. Just bring cabbage with you. to
Maybe.
eat.
I mean, it could be, right? We don't know anything about these fictional Calistani people. We don't learn much about their culture.
Nope.
So Peter fucking brutalizes these people.
Well, he steals that girl's sign. Did you notice?
He steals the one lady's sign,
And
but
she loses it.
she goes
Did you-
nuts. Yeah.
'cause he's sticking to the wall.
And she kind of has a tantrum, which is very funny. Then he does one of our complaints about this show is that the stunts work is often kind of lazy. Like
Yeah.
Peter doesn't do a lot of cool stuff. He shoots a web, swings into just fucking dislocates this guy's spine.
Yeah, anybody.
Like just full on with the strength of a spider, like kick some student, like take this, you dirty hippie.
He said, "Who's next?"
Who's next? He does say who's
He
next.
says,
Yep. He grabs a woman's arm and bends it around 360 degrees, pops it right out.
Steve Ditko would be so happy.
Steve Dick,
If people,
Tim,
we don't want to get into it. Steve Ditko was.
Steve Ditko.
Oh God, we can't go into the story.
No, we have to really quickly. All right, here's your crash course in Spider-Man. Spider-Man was created by the combined forces, although it's disputed how much of which, of Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. Now, we all like to pillory Stan Lee because he's the big face and he's like, true believer. And he's like, and he's definitely responsible for stealing credit from a lot of people.
Right.
But Steve Ditko's iteration of Spider-Man was a very conservative, angry young man who kind of sucked. Those comics are still great. I love reading them, but thank goodness Stan Lee was able to put in, because Peter was like a weird square who would would be like cursing out hippies and
that's what Steve wanted, and Stan's like, no, he'd be on their side, and that's
Stan's like sitting there smoking a big fat doobie, like, nah, I don't think we should do that. So yeah, they battled over that, and
so we think that's why he quit Spider-Man, but we don't know exactly all the reasons.
Yeah, there's probably a whole bunch of reasons.
So we won't get into that.
So Spider-Man's up there going, who's next? Who's next? He's going to fucking crawl these students. And then we see Mandak, who we don't know as Mandak, but he's the guy with he might be wearing brown face and he's got blue eyes. It's hard to tell. And he looks up above Peter and this big chunk of masonry starts wiggling and it falls down and hits the ground. And everyone's like, oh. And at this point, were you like me, Tim? I'm like, do we actually have superpowers in this episode?
I was excited.
I know.
Because Spider-Man did
all the
save...
other episodes we've seen.
Yeah.
There's never been powers anybody but Spider-Man. And there's weird stuff like mind control devices.
Yeah.
Things. But we've never had superpowers. Like this guy might actually have powers.
This is this is after this, I think, that Peter does meet Trina. He doesn't meet her quite yet.
Really?
I think outside he's like, Trina, I've never met you before. And she's like, well, I go here to school. And he's like, well, I don't see you. She's like, it's a big campus. They do that thing. He's like, you were never at my...
I wrote it completely out of order then.
You were never at my one-man performance of the Miracle Worker I put on. I didn't see you there. Anyway, I thought he talked to her afterwards.
Maybe he does. But there was a line where somebody, after this chunk of masonry falls down, somebody goes, was it an earthquake?
Yeah.
And Peter's like, yeah, if we were in California, which I'm like, you are in California. This show is definitely filmed in California. So, man, there's a lot of quick scenes that go from here to here in this.
Well, JJ shows up because Jonah Jameson's wife funded this art exhibit, or
turns out she was she was on the museum board.
Yes.
And she gave lots of money to this thing. And I guess
it's unclear whether she's alive or dead.
No, they specifically say she's dead later.
Okay, I missed that.
The head of the museum goes, when he's having the confrontation, when the statue falls on him, before that he says, I don't want to speak ill of the dead,
I gotcha.
but your wife. So,
Peter does take a picture of Mandak. He sees him and goes,
Oh, thank you for mentioning that.
You look suspicious. You've got a beard and a mustache.
Because Peter, I don't know if we said this, you hairy fuck. Peter was there at this thing, even though it was his school, to sell photos of this to the Daily Bugle where he works. So J. Jonah Jameson's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I also go to school here.
Yes.
And there's this whole thing. We learned J. Jonah Jameson is like, we have to have this show. I don't care that we're stealing cultural artifacts from an oppressed minority. The guy at the museum's like, I think you should quit because of the curse of Rava.
Yes.
Which turns out if you steal the Rava statue, there is a curse that bad things will happen to you. And like at this point, because there was the riot and I guess the scimitar, the museum guy's like, fuck this shit.
Yep.
And Peter's just sitting there like taking photos and stuff.
Then we get to the Daily Bugle. We get that shot again, 1890. The Daily Bugle was founded.
Another placard, another bronze placard.
You know what happened in 1890, George?
What happened? Oh, good. We're getting more. What happened in 1990? What happened?
Mississippi becomes the first state to require a literacy test as qualification for voting. I'm sure that wasn't like anything to do with...
I'm sure that wasn't racially motivated by the fact that you had a recently enslaved populace let loose. Yeah. Ugh.
That didn't get to go to school.
Mississippi.
Well, that was a long time ago. Better. They're all better now.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Hi, listeners in Mississippi.
So JJ doesn't want to buy these pictures because he doesn't want bad publicity, I think. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so Peter has all these great photos of the riot and the show, but J. Jonah Jameson's like, I'm not going to buy these, you know. Peter's like, but you say you have to always cover the news. He's like, yeah, but like, you know, this is my dead wife's thing, blibbity blah. And Peter...
it leads, come on.
But Peter does a pretty smooth move, which I was very proud of Peter. He starts kind of talking out loud about like, well, maybe I could sell this to someone else.
Right.
And J. Jonah Jameson realizes, like the New York Bulletin or some other paper they made up,
Daily Planet,
they could run this thing. They didn't say Daily Planet. Would have been cool though. So he buys the photos from Peter. Peter sells all the photos, and this is important to everybody: the negatives, so that Peter can't sell them elsewhere.
Right.
And he gives him a $50 bonus. Tim, do you want to know what $50 back in 1977? Take a guess.
Now, maybe, let's see. You've done this before. 300?
I do this every time. I love it.
300?
It's my shtick. Close. $252.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a pretty sweet little bonus. I mean, we've seen Peter before, like willing to strangle a man for $30.
$46. $46.
That was it. $46
for those transistors. I wonder if he ever got them.
So now, no, he doesn't, because he built Spider-Man. He's like, fuck this. Flip.
Did you see that Jonah drives around a nice antique Rolls Royce? I hope you noticed that.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm always amused about this show that's set in New York that they all have cars. I've remarked on this before.
But a Rolls Royce.
Well, he's super rich. He's, got a museum board. So J. Jonah Jameson then shows up at the museum. He's all grumpy because he's like, Parker took money from me, blippity blop. He's talking to the museum guy again. And what they don't know is Mandak.
Yes, Mandak.
The guy with telekinesis is in the shower.
The beard and the mustache. He's evil.
And yeah, he's evil because he has a beard and mustache. And he makes the telekinetic statue. Like, he's throwing stuff around with his mind. Like, shields are flying.
Well, Professor Raston and J. Jonah Jameson and Mandak are there.
Yeah, but Mandak is hidden.
Oh, I thought they talked to him.
No, that was earlier. The first time the professor speaks to Mandak. Because they have no idea Mandak's there. It would be kind of obvious that what was happening.
Stuff flies around.
But J. Jonah Jameson and the professor are arguing. People have seen this.
Yes.
And then the statue falls on the guy.
and I remember what you said. Did you notice nobody dies in the show? So I was
nobody dies in the show.
He's under there going, please kill me. I'm in agony. It's a giant metal statue on top of me.
You're making a joke, Tim, but later there was something very similar to that. And I hope I remember to bring this up.
Yes, I know.
So the police come to the museum, and we see recurring character,
Trina.
Police Chief William Barbera.
Sorry, Barbera.
No, Hanna-Barbera, we decided his name is. And he's like, J. Jonah Jameson, I think you did it.
Yeah.
And J. Jonah Jameson's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, you're the only person here. We have multiple people saying you were fighting earlier. All this jazz. He puts J. Jonah Jameson in jail.
Yep. Puts him in the clink, right next to
the clink.
next to a man eating a package of hot dogs.
Just wait, so that's what you think should happen to the unhoused?
No. Jamie's like,
actually, there was there. I do want to mention his jail setting. There was nobody else there, and he's dressed impeccably in a 3-piece suit, like and right in the middle of his room is a toilet. I'm like, man, do you think J. Jonah Jameson? Do you think they're making him shit in that?
What was Jameson's wife's name?
And the comics, isn't it Marta or Martha?
All right.
Who knows though? Because as we've established in the other episodes,
that cell, he's like, call Martha, call for a good time.
For a good. Whoa, fucking, that's rude.
Who the
fuck knows? Because Uncle Ben is called Uncle Max in this show.
I know.
It's all insanity. Peter shows up because there's only like 8 people in this entire episode.
Well, that's what I was saying. J. Jonah Jameson has no other friends or family. Just Peter shows up in the jail.
Well, they explain it. Peter's like, your lawyer's coming. We didn't hire an actor, but I'm telling you that. And J. Jonah Jameson's like, why are you here? And he's like, Glory Grant told me.
Yep.
Well, no, not Glory Grant. Rita Conway. But guys, it's Glory Grant.
Yes, I know. And he wants the pictures back for some reason. He's like, I think I have a picture of the man who did this. I'm like, well, yeah, he's at the school, Peter. You don't need the picture.
Why does Peter assume he is the bad guy, aside from the fact that he has a beard and mustache?
Well, spider sense flashed him in his mind.
Oh, yeah. Okay. See, convenient. The spider sense is good for filling those plot holes.
But still, no need for having the pictures. It didn't prove anything. It's just him standing on the lawn.
It's him standing there looking up like, I'm looking up at something. And then we also, because the stakes weren't high enough, J. Jonah Jameson clearly going to beat the murder rap. Even Barbera is like, that statue must weigh half a ton. He can't lift it, but he's got to do it because something. But J. Jonah Jameson, we learn, has to meet with the board of the Bugle in the next 3 days. And if he's in jail, he will lose control of the paper, and Peter will get fired, and the world will probably end.
And Professor Rastin, who doesn't die, they're like, he's not doing good. He's in a coma. He opened one eye. He's in a coma again. He gets a phone call. He's awake again. And I'm like, he's not going to die. Nobody dies.
No, what's even funnier? They actually don't even say coma. They just say he's not awake. This show is so averse to real violence that I don't think they can even say a coma.
Here's I don't know if it's right after this, if you got this big racial moment. Oh. So Peter then goes to the Daily Bugle and he's like, Rita, I really need those pictures to prove I saw the spirited guy. And she's like, well, Peter, he locks his office when, he's not here. And Peter's like, well, you're right here. And she's like, well, why do you think he locks it? You didn't hear that?
Oh, I didn't interpret that as a racial thing.
I did. She looked at him like, well, why do you think he locks it? I'm here.
I figured because she was the sort of person that, tells his random photographer that he's in jail.
No,
she's done stuff behind his back. Oh, that's interesting. You might be right.
I swear. That's
so then Peter just straight up stalks.
Yeah, I wrote that
Trina
down too. Stalk, underlined. Stalks. He knows where she goes to class. Trina.
She's like, how'd you know I was here? He's like, well, I looked up your schedule. Your last class was there. Your next one's here. This is the line between the two. And it's like, whoa, Peter, that's you're going to get we should mention too, Trina is like capital B babe. She's super hot because they actually do. I know I end up sounding thirsty and weird, but they do end up finding exceptionally attractive women for this show. I'm like, man. They casted this thing.
I didn't even look her up. I don't know what she's done after this. But
I did, and there was a whole bunch of 70s stuff. I don't remember.
All right.
I looked up Mandak. I looked up a lot of the actors. I don't remember any of it. So Peter asks her about Khalistan, and it turns out that she is a third-generation immigrant from Khalistan. So she
seems to know something.
She knows something. There's maybe something behind there. And maybe his spider sense tells him something.
No, but you can tell she's lying, she's sweating.
She's sweating. She's very sweaty. She's so sweaty.
Hot California weather.
But here's where we learn that we were right to assume that the good white people were the good guys and those bad Middle Eastern type people were bad guys.
Yes.
Because Trina says, well, if that statue of Rava goes back to Khalistan, the cult of Khalistan, which I guess is different than the country.
Yes.
Will use it to create a huge civil war. they've had peace for 70 years since they got rid of this cult. It's very shades of like Temple of Doom and the Thuggy cult. And it's before.
Yeah.
So I think Steven Spielberg probably was watching this like,
And shades,
yes, excellent.
And shades of today.
And shades of everything awful.
It's a big orange statue they need for their... Peter keeps trying to tell Barbera. It's like, listen, I know what's going on. Why don't you believe me? And Barbera's like, Peter. And he sticks in what I think is a sexual insult almost they snuck in. Because he's begging Barbera to help him. And Barbera says, Peter, don't you have a slide ruler to oil at home or something? Didn't you hear that?
He did say that. Again, I went into this very innocent. I was missing the racial overtones that...
Don't you have a slide ruler that needs to be greased, Peter?
Then he says, he does say at some point too, Barbera's like, because Peter's trying to tell him this guy Mandak's involved in this. He goes, he was there. You don't understand, Captain Barbera. He was there at the riot. He goes, you're always at all these things. Are you trouble? And I'm like, that's a good fucking point. Like, this guy runs week after week. He runs into both Spider-Man and Peter Parker. It's like, why are you always involved in this shit?
Peter, shouldn't you be at the zoo visiting your parents?
So then,
Peter, don't you have a pet monkey looking for a face to rip off?
Oh, I'm like, pet monkey.
Then Peter says,
Peter, is this your yellow hat?
Shouldn't you be at the graveyard digging up a date for the sock hop? Peter says, Captain Barbera, why are you so hard on me? Captain Barbera says, that's what your Aunt May said to me last night, Parker. Now get out of here.
Whoa.
You missed
I have a question about the graveyard for the sock hop. Who was that in reference to?
Nobody. Well, Peter. Peter can't get a date.
Oh, so he's going to dig up a dead teenager?
No. I just wrote sock hop dance because, university dance.
All right, I have to share something with the listening audience. I have increasingly I ribbed Tim of his age and his old references. I'm increasingly becoming alarmed that Tim is actually maybe decades, even centuries older than he appears.
I think so.
Sock hop. Good Lord. Then there was actually a scene I actually really couldn't tell what happened. So he realizes something's up. So then we do see Mandak follows Barbera, but they're in a car. Yep. Like the picture we saw was them walking. So I don't know if it was like figurative. Peter is now Spidey. He swings from a pole.
The same shot from all episodes.
No, is it? Yes, I didn't realize that. I got so excited. I put exclamation point. I'm like, there's money in this.
He does run along the top of buildings and somehow keeps up with the cars. But yeah.
And this scene, I feel like, was possibly actually shot in New York.
Possibly. I couldn't tell.
Because it actually makes sense to me. Like, I was thinking about this because I don't think they fly Nicholas Hammond, the actor who plays Peter, and they don't fly whoever plays like Hanna-Barbera and stuff. But I think they could probably just get a stuntman in New York to run around on a building and follow a car. And I think that's what they did. So they look like some New York-y stuff here. Barbera is singing the most tuneless random song. It's like, it's like, what?
Yeah, what
Are
song
you
was
okay?
that?
It was like, they're like, we can't afford to pay any music for real songs. Make something up.
But his car breaks down, and for some reason, he drives into an alleyway. Don't know why he did that.
Yeah. And did his car break down, or did Mandak, following in his fancy car, use his telekinesis?
Yes.
I posit the latter.
That's what happened.
And so he's trying to fix his car. He's got the hood up. Barbera. He gets mad. He walks away, and then Mandak's watching from the head of the alleyway, and then the car comes chasing after him.
Yep, and the garbage can even blocks the
and then
other
a giant dumpster starts moving towards him too. And then commercial break. Then we come back from the commercial break, which I should mention on our commercial breaks, because Tim sent me a version that was taped off of Sci-Fi. There was funny interviews with people involved in making the show, like a director who's like, yeah, he had a rope in his thing. It shot out. And a producer saying like, Spider-Man, he's popular. And then finally Stan Lee actually giving an account of the creations, like,
totally
Steve
false.
Ditko had this idea.
Totally fake
and I pulled it off his desk and said, take a walk, Ditko. Wow, he became the Penguin midway through that.
Yes, you did.
So then we cut back after this tense moment of Captain Barbera about to be flattened between a dumpster and a speeding driverless car. And they do this hilarious quick montage him, like these photos, like, and
like 60s.
Wouldn't you know it? Suddenly we see a rope wrapped around him, and he gets yanked away. The rope is actually a web.
Yep. That's pretty.
Spider-Man saves him.
Pretty cool effect.
It was pretty cool. It's definitely just not a rope being showed in reverse, pulled off him.
But they show Spider-Man holding it, so I was like, oh, they spent some money on this.
Yeah, you're right. There were good effects, and Spider-Man holds him like a little baby.
He says, Barbera says, you pulled me out of that terrible sandwich, and Peter's like, yeah, I forget now. He says, I removed the bologna. That's right. I don't know.
Oh, that's what he said.
He said something about you were in a trouble sandwich, and Barbera
and he's like, I pulled out the bologna.
The bologna he rescued. I ruined it. I totally ruined it.
Well, the delivery was bad. I couldn't hear what it was. I actually think he said, I pulled out my bologna, and he looks down and winks.
Jeez. Yeah, that's what
happened. And Barbera goes, and then the scene ends.
Oh, Barbera said, I would have been a Hanna-Barbera sandwich if you hadn't pulled me out.
Well, Tim, that would have been funny if a Hanna-Barbera sandwich was something instead of a cartoon studio. Okay. So then, I don't remember what we see that another newspaper has gotten a picture of J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, not in jail, but they report that he's in jail, and he's like, "I'm going to lose the paper, Peter."
Yeah.
And
that Rita.
Peter goes to him.
Be careful of Rita. I don't trust her. I suspect she's Jewish because she's always eating bagels for breakfast.
Her last name is Conway. Means she's like a con. Peter, who's still trying to get this picture of Mandak at the riot.
Yes.
Because he's like, that proves he did it.
Yeah.
He speaks to J. Jonah Jameson, and J. Jonah Jameson's like, no, I'm not going to sell you this back. He's like, but you're in jail. He's like, I don't care. So then he just goes and talks to Rita, and then they just steal it.
Did she let him in?
The end.
I forget.
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess so, yeah. I thought there was going to be more. Like, I was a little confusing. Like, they're just talking about it. This is where Tim had the line, like, why do you think he locks it? And then we just cut, and, like, he's got it. I'm like, oh, so I guess you guys just fucking broke into his office.
Yeah, that's right. He does talk her into it. He's like, well, yeah. So just steal it. You steal it. Call your cousin in to steal it. Because she says something in another episode. You know, I got a cousin that'll take some hubcaps. I'm like, oh, come on. They did.
that was
real.
I know, that was really messed up. About this time, we have what I consider to be a little bit of a non sequitur of a scene, but I think is to explain a little bit of the premise behind Mandak.
I know what you're going to say.
This show is so steeped in the 70s. Like, each of the episodes, you could be like, oh, this is your anxiety about cult leaders. This is your anxiety about ghosts. It's like they were watching, like, In Search Of, and then they did this. And Peter's talking to some doctor.
Yep, another doctor.
And he's, like, describing the stuff that was reported that J. Jonah Jameson saw, and what Peter himself has seen at this point.
Well,
and the doctor's like...
Yeah, his name...
Sounds like telekinesis. His name was Dr. Keller.
Keller, yeah. He goes to Dr. Keller, and Keller's like, oh, yeah, telekinesis. I get calls every day of people moving things, bending spoons, reading my mind.
Yeah, I thought the Keller, that's a reference to Uri Geller, right?
It's Keller, not Geller, so I don't know.
I know, but it's close. It's like naming...
Did you know? Yeah.
No, what?
That was so popular. There was a game in the 70s called ESP. Did you have it?
No.
I had it.
What was the game of ESP?
My mom got it at a rummage sale, so I'll beat up. This is basically, it had a board with lines pointing north, south, west, east, and you would hold a pendulum above it, and it said, move your eyes back and forth, and you'll make the pendulum move. And you know what? It did. But my parents or somebody point out, well, you do that with your eyes, you'll see your hand moves a little bit. It just, you can't help yourself. You're holding the pendulum. So the rest of the game was all these cards that you annoy adults with the symbols. You're like, here, concentrate on the symbol. I'm going to guess what it is. That whole thing.
Just like in Ghostbusters.
Yes, that's all the rest of it is.
Okay.
And I can never guess some of it.
And then your parents are like, enough of this game. Here's your cold hot dog. Go eat it under the table.
Please give me salt and pepper.
No, you can't handle salt and pepper. We'll wait a few years until you're ready for that.
Well, you never.
Also, weirdly, Dr. Keller mentions teleportation, like that's something that happened in this episode. It doesn't, right?
I know.
I'm like, why are we bringing this up? Because it starts with tele. He's like, how about telephones? Huh? Telemarketing? That could be a power.
Yeah. Now I got
telescope. Oh, telescope, huh? Television.
Teletubby.
Wow. That's and he sings the whole Teletubby song. That's great.
Tell a friend.
Let's move this along.
Well, no, but then he says, I got to go down the hall and have lunch with the arachnatologist. What was he called?
It was from a previous episode. There's another professor. It was an arachnologist, yes. I think. Yeah.
We got some theories that if a man had the powers of a spider, he'd have 8 legs and big eyes.
Shoot webs out of his wrists. Just like spiders do. Just like Peter Parker doesn't. Because he uses technology, folks.
Oh, I know. You want to move along, George.
Yeah,
this is just how our notes go.
I know.
He's still angry at Barbera comes to visit the telekinesis professor. You notice that?
Oh, yeah. We don't see that, though. It's just like, because Peter's one step ahead of the cops.
Yeah, he walks by, and he's still angry. He's like, get out of here, Peter. And Peter says, I don't know why he says this, but he says, maybe I can get you into my frat. And we all know Peter is not in a frat house.
Well, maybe he is.
No. Well, I have a list of reasons why Peter is not in a frat house.
Can't wait.
There are three things that happened that disqualified him.
All right, let's hear him.
So, you got to get hazed to join a frat house? I think we all know that.
Yes.
So the first hazing event for Peter and the other plebs, are they called plebs? Plebes?
Pledges. Right?
Yeah. They had to...
Clearly, Tim and I were big Greek guys.
Well, the first hazing was he had to sneak into the funeral home naked with his other pledges and steal a coffin to put into the dean's office. But unfortunately...
It sounds like autobiographical tales of Tim's past in Ithaca.
No. Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, while he was in the funeral home, Peter and his pals ran into Aunt May, who was measuring her coffin like she does every Friday night. So that was awkward.
Just in case, Peter was Aunt May naked as well.
Yeah, she had to get into it and fit, and
she wants she wants a real tight fit.
Yes.
She's like, can't be wearing any bulk.
So the next hazing event was meant for Peter and the other newbies to go streaking through the Delta Sigma Chi-Rho sorority's annual haunted house event.
My interest just peaked up at hearing She-Ra.
And unfortunately, they ran into Aunt May, who was there measuring the prop coffin as she thought she was at the funeral home.
I suspect I know what's going to happen the third time.
It may take a hard right turn.
You're right. Yeah, you might be setting me up for foolishness.
The third and final hazing event that broke the camel's back. Peter and the other plebes were made to drop... Pledges.
I think they're pledges.
Peter and his other pledges were made to drop acid and run naked through the annual coffin festival at the convention center. But because
this is definitely the adventures of Tim as a young man.
But because they were tripping on acid, they accidentally ran through the measurement and slide rule convention, where they ran into Peter's Aunt May, who was buying a new ruler to measure coffins with.
Oh, and was Barbera there going, yeah. All right. That was good, Tim. All right, so move the plot forward. We then see Trina. We see Trina Pandit, who is the Khalistani descended student of Peter's, co-student of Peter's. I said that wrong.
She's kidnapped. Are we there yet?
No, she gets kidnapped by Mandak, who like fucking Darth Vader's her.
Yeah.
He chokes her with his brain. And I think maybe telepathically changes her brain. I was a little unsure if she was acting under coercion of physical force or being choked out.
Yeah, I think she's
or if he actually changed her brain.
Well, she said, please. And he says, I thought you'd see things my way. So I guess we're intuinating. What's that word?
Intonating?
That she's doing
Intimating?
What he says so she does not choke him again. Choke her again.
All right.
Because there's no defense against telekinetic attack. Basically, this is the end. They steal the statue. She helps steal the statue.
Yeah, and Peter and Barbera are talking about keys to the museum because the statue is stolen.
Keys.
And they realize there's only 2 sets of keys, and one of them is the guy who had the statue dropped on him. And who was the other one? Peter figures out. I don't think he tells it to the cop. Trina. Because he goes...
Well, she's also... Do we know this yet? She's the daughter of the last priestess of Rava.
I forgot they mentioned that part.
That was like a big reveal.
Yeah.
They need her for some reason. I forget. But.
Yeah, there's a whole line like, your grandmother must have told... It was her grandmother, not her.
Because it's like a whole supernatural horror plot going on.
Yeah. So Peter shows up the next day using his mad stalking skills, finds out where she is. She's like, how'd you know I was going to be at the water fountain? He's like, I know.
Yep.
He accuses her of the theft. She admits it. She totally says, yeah, it's this guy. What's his fucking name?
Mandak or Professor Rastin?
Mandak. Mandak, we explained. So, like, he is the high priest of Rava. Traditionally, the high priests have strong telekinetic abilities. That's how they get to be the high priest.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get the statue, take it back to Khalistan, overthrow the government, and ruin the 70 years of peace they've been having.
Yes.
And Peter's like, we have to stop those people getting back their cultural artifact.
And Barbera's like, well, I can't go on the grounds of the consulate. And Spider-Man's like, you just be in the back of the consulate tonight at 8 o'clock.
Wait, that was the consulate? I thought it was the museum.
No, they stole it they took it to their consulate. That's why Barbera's like, well, I can't go to the consulate. That's foreign soil.
Yeah, because Peter's going to break in as Spider-Man and carry it out onto the sidewalk.
Because
like, you be here like 8 o'clock.
Spider-Man jumps on top of his car, another nice, expensive effect, which, he does that in the comics
was that
all
earlier?
the time. I think it was now because he showed up to say, listen, it's at the consulate, and you just be outside at 8 o'clock. And I was like, oh, you're not going to tell Spider-Man not to, like, break international law?
Yeah, he doesn't care.
And he jumps away, and everybody laughs. I'm like, why are you laughing? Because Spider-Man was on your car. Strange reaction. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did, actually. And I was wondering, did I miss something? I don't care enough to rewind. I already read to rewind a couple times this episode.
Well, he breaks into the consulate. Are we up to that? He webs up the two guys that are packing up the statue with the giant rope.
This is the first Spider-Man episode we saw where he doesn't fight random judo thugs.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
He just webs these dudes up. He also uses some spider strength. He grabs the bars on the window, which is why I thought it was the museum, and rips them out, which I'm like, that looked pretty good.
Yep. And then it's a telekinesis battle.
Yeah, which...
only the scene is only to be rivaled by the scene in Superman 2 where Ursula, is it her, who blows her breath and everything's flying at Superman. That's basically what happens.
Well, Mandak uses telekinesis because it turns out, surprise, surprise, Mandak actually literally does have powers, which I was a little surprised. He throws a desk at Peter across the floor.
Papers.
He makes all these papers fly around and stuff. Peter's like, oh, and when I'm saying Peter, Spider-Man. And then we see behind Spider-Man the statue coming forward. And I'm honestly not sure if the statue was supposed to be moving of its own volition.
Wait a minute.
Or if Mandak was trying to crush him with it.
Are you skipping the very funny scene, though?
Which one?
Because Spider-Man's up against the wall going, papers. And he looks up and sees a vent. And he webs the vent and tries to swing. But he just falls on the floor.
Because of the telekinesis. He's like, flip, boom. Yeah, it's just like he can't fight Mandak. Mandak actually literally has powers. It's actually pretty decent. So the same statue that maybe put that guy into a coma, didn't kill him, comes sliding across the floor towards Spider-Man. Spider-Man moves out of the way. Not with a cool jump, just kind of moves out of the way.
Yes.
And it hits Mandak.
Somehow.
I guess. Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
This is as confusing as the last episode when the clone just ran into a electrical box and exploded. This one, the statue just happens to go up against the wall against Mandak.
Yeah, I couldn't decide if it was supposed to be like the statue is like the god's like, I don't want you to create this world. I don't know. But
yeah, they could have done that. But
because this show has a very strong policy against killing people, which I'm going to posit happened in post-production. I think that guy was dead. The first guy at first. Uh-huh. And because we never see him at the hospital. No. We never see him again.
No one cares about him.
And then Mandak, we see him, he's pinned against the wall and his face is like he's dead, but in ADR, a line recorded the fact, we hear him going,
and Spider-Man kind of poses and looks at the camera.
Spider-Man takes a selfie, flashes like the web signs, like, woo.
Signs it Peter Parker, sells it to the paper.
So I just realized something. So this exonerates J. Jonah Jameson.
Yep.
Which would seem to me in the universe that Spider-Man takes place in, they were like, this guy definitely has telekinesis. This is a thing. Like, that changes the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but I don't think they...
I mean, I guess the doctor was already like, this guy's telekinesis?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, every week some guy comes to me, telling him about how he makes stuff with his brain. Setting up a sequel...
If Spider-Man fought lizard people, he'd probably go to a scientist and he'd be like, yeah, there's lizard people. Get reports all the time. That's where they live. They live in the sewers.
But you would never fight lizard people. That's too comic booky.
It is.
So then we have a little scene with Trina and I want to say J. Jonah Jameson and Peter, and let's just say Rita was there too. I don't remember. Maybe Barbera. Maybe all the regulars are there. And they're talking about like, well, JJJ gets off,
mm-hmm.
and they're like, and Ralston, he's better now. The guy,
Professor.
museum head who got crushed.
They mentioned that he's better.
And they're like, and Peter's like, and what about Mandak, who was also clearly dead, but not really. And Trina's like, well, he got taken. He got
taken back to his country, I think.
Well, his bail was paid for by his country, and he went back home.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why would Khalistan want him back? She goes, makes you wonder. The government wants the guy back who's going to overthrow it. And you're like, oh, they're definitely setting up a sequel for the Revenge of Mandak, which probably never happened. But having not seen all 13 episodes of the show, maybe it did. Second time we've seen that, though, because in the pilot episode, there was the other supervillainy guy, Mr. White, who Peter just like fucking lets escape. And he's like, hey, I'll be back. Well, then they pose in front of the statue.
Yeah, that was a funny pose.
They took a photo. Yeah, they're like, hey, here's the stolen cultural relic, and we're just
going to keep it.
Yeah,
put it right next to this statue from South Africa that we stole.
Here's a bunch of Native American things we dug out of a burial mound. Here's some looted Greek marbles.
Here's this giant we found.
A giant hominid with horns.
Yes, with horns.
Don't tell the Smithsonian we have this. They need to hide it. This proves the Bible's real.
Ooh, we'll do our revenge. Wherever you are, wherever you're hiding, I'll find you. I'll get you.
Revenge.
Revenge.
Revenge. One of us will die. One of us will die.
I will not let Cindy take my place. I will have my revenge.
Yeah. Well, first we have to do the wild card question.
Well, yeah.
I almost called you Peter.
We do that as part of revenge.
All right. So the first part of our revenge, our wild card question, Pete. I'm going to call you Peter. Yeah.
Why aren't you? You're not even curious about the first time I tasted salt and pepper.
Well, let's hear that story, Tim.
My grandmother made poached eggs and put salt and pepper on there, and I ate it. And I'm like, ooh, these little crystals are yummy. I remember that. I just remember it clearly.
How old were you?
Must be 4. Must be. I don't know.
It's amazing you remember that.
I remember food. You don't remember food? Didn't you get like lasagna the first time and you're like, oh my God, what is this?
Man, let me think if there's any food I can remember the first time I ate. Like maybe sushi or something? No, I don't think I do.
That's when you're older.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm just sad. Spider month is over.
I know. It's been a wild ride full of web slinging and all kinds of stuff.
I got to calm down. I can't go to sleep for 4 hours after I do one of these.
I know. I just do like jumping jacks after a spider month. I try to do backflips, but I'm very inflexible. So I just got to jump up in the air and land flat on my back and lay there writhing in pain.
What was our question?
All right.
Oh.
So most likely to find dead hippies in their outhouse.
I think we know.
I have a theory.
We both know the same. We're going to say J. Jonah Jameson, right?
Yeah, of course.
He's got an upstate house. And
here's the only question, Tim.
How do they get there?
Yeah, does he do it himself? Is he a secret serial killer?
That's too easy.
It's J. Jonah Jameson.
I think he's just always in New York. He's got an upstate house. It's where
and by upstate New York, it's actually just California.
His wife, who they don't like to speak ill of the dead, but I think she lives there, an invalid. And
she is the only dead character in this entire show.
Okay, I don't want to ruin that.
Even Uncle Max, we don't know. The Uncle Ben Stanton, we don't know for sure if he's dead. He could have just left with like a fellow Buccaneer aficionado.
We can't fail this week. How do those dead hippies get into our house? Does it involve Bigfoot? Does it involve LSD?
I'll tell you how it happens.
They're pledges from Peter's fraternity.
Yeah,
or unless you have something better.
Well, yeah, I have something pretty great, actually.
Okay.
So J. Jonah Jameson, of course, is famously antagonistic to Spider-Man,
right?
Even though he helps him sell newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Ironic also because he doesn't realize one of his closest reporters, who is confirmed to be a reporter in this one, by the way, is Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man. So he hires a special investigator to investigate Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
And this investigator realizes he can't keep up with Spider-Man. He needs superpowers to do it. He goes and sees a crooked underworld scientist.
Okay.
And he becomes Mac Gargan, a.k.a. the Scorpion.
Ah.
He has super strength and super durability, and he has a suit of armor that looks kind of like a cactus with a long tail. And he kills those hippies because they smell bad.
But George, you said you had something better. Jesus.
Tim, villainy needs no explanation. Villainy, if you're a guy who is willing to be operated on, to be given weird powers, maybe, is he like the Rhino? Is he stuck in his suit? I don't know.
For a time.
He was stuck in it, so he can't even get out to shit. You don't think this guy's going to go a little nuts? So he's going to kill these smelly hippies, but his revenge portion, he could just throw them in a bridge or blame it on Bigfoot. No, he sticks it in J. Jonah Jameson's house because he gets the idea. J. Jonah Jameson went to jail once for not killing a guy at the statue.
I was going to say that another fraternity hazing, they had to go upstate to J. Jonah Jameson's house and steal his outhouse because they knew he had a famous outhouse. And the only way they could get there was to get Aunt May to drive them up there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is the outhouse famous?
Well, because he's the only man in the neighborhood who has an outhouse. That's all.
What does everybody else in the neighborhood do?
Well, they have indoor plumbing, like a communist would.
Oh, it's very much like in Boggy Creek, too, where the retired lawyer,
Yes.
who should be the most well-off person, is shitting in an outhouse with Sears Roebuck catalogs.
Yes. So
Okay.
they go get the outhouse. Aunt May drove them to J. Jonah Jameson's upstate house.
Yeah.
They said, Aunt May, you wait here. We're going to go get the outhouse and tie it to the top of the car. She's very forgetful. She just drove away. She went to Subway.
Oh.
She heard there was a Subway to go get a sandwich at, and she really loves Subway.
But she was confused because she's a city goer, and she thought the Subway was actually like a train.
Yeah.
So she sat in a piece of bread and was like, I hope this is express.
Wow. Anyway,
Damn, I'm good.
It was early frost. And they're like, I
Early
guess we
frost.
got to sit in this outhouse to get warm, Peter. And Peter's Spider-Man. He's like, I'll go get help while you sit here. Stay warm. And Peter, he gets lost.
Does he get lost, or he's like, fuck these dirty hippies?
Well,
Are they hippies?
He bumps
This is
his head.
pledges.
He forgets who he is. And they freeze to death in the outhouse. So there you go.
Nice.
And they're like, Peter, you're definitely not getting into our fraternity. My God.
All right.
You're going to read your...
Should we do our revenge stories?
Yeah. You're going to do yours first?
I'll do mine first because it's short.
You didn't pick the one I picked.
I don't think so.
Nope.
I'm pretty sure. I'm going to try to think what would you do and see if I can ruin it real quick. All right, so
Start the music.
we talked up front. There was a lot of twists and turns in this. Oh, start the music. A lot of twists and turns in this episode. A lot of aggrieved parties. There's literally an entire country and culture which has a reason to be pissed off at this museum. But the person who I'm going to spotlight on is that one protester who Peter fucking kicks the fucking shit out of in the beginning. That guy, I don't know what his name is yet. I'll figure it as I go along. He just woke up in the morning. He had some cold Chinese food from like last week they ate. He didn't have a lot of money.
His last name was Crabtree.
His name was Crabtree. Yeah, his name was Crabtree. He moved here from Boggy Creek. He doesn't have like a lot of money. He doesn't have a lot of connections. It's weird that his name is Crabtree because he was from Khalistan, apparently.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Maybe it's a normal name there. I don't know. We don't know anything about Khalistan. And he works 3 jobs just trying to put himself through school.
Oof.
But he still takes the time because he's like, you know what? I don't even believe in Rava. I'm a Rastafarian.
Oh.
But I still realize this is something that is against, this is the appropriation of a culture. For what? To sell some tickets to a shitty museum?
Yeah.
What is the Balt Museum?
What is the Balt Museum?
Do you sell screws?
Big, old, long...
Yeah, what? Big
tin
long what, Tim? Big long what?
horns.
Tin horns, just like bolts, yeah. So he leaves early from his job scrubbing sewers and is going to be late to his job sewing scrubbers.
Telemarketing.
And he also telemarkets while he's there on it. He has a prototype cell phone. It's the size of a Buick.
Yes.
And he's parked there and he's protesting. He wrote the sign on the back of his thesis paper because he didn't afford the paper. And he's sitting there and he's just like, he's so mad. He's full of righteous indignation. His people being, like, their heritage being stripped away from them. And people just not even appreciating, mocking them, saying, like, this guy's an ugly god. He's stupid looking.
Yeah.
And suddenly, through no fault of his own, because of a shady understanding of telekinesis, he's gripped with a murderous rage. And he decides he's going to storm the Capitol building. I mean the museum. And he runs over, and he's throwing stuff. And then he hears, hey, you dirty hippie. He looks up, and 175 pounds of amazing Spider-Man swinging at 260 miles per hour lands into his mid-thorax region, separating his spine.
Oof.
He's paralyzed.
Knocked him right in the crab trees.
Right in the crab trees. He doesn't have medical insurance because in the United States we don't do that. Yeah, he loses all his medical insurance. He loses his home. He's sleeping under a bridge. He has to drag himself there using only his forelegs.
He didn't even get to go to the hospital with Professor Rustin?
He went to the hospital with Professor Rustin. Well, actually, he went to the hospital first. They kicked him out of his bed for Professor Rustin. Like, this guy is maybe asleep. I'm not sure. You go sit in the sewer.
Jeez.
So he goes down there. He crawls down there. And that's when he gets approached by a shady underworld scientist. And the shady underworld scientist is like, I'm going to give you a chance to get even with Spider-Man. He's like, I'll do anything you could take. He cost me my job, my mobility, my respect, my health, my dignity, my left pair of pants. I don't know, he has one pair of pants, left one on the right. We won't ask about that. And this guy does experiments on him.
Is it Mr. Transistor?
Creates a cybernetic suit. No, he becomes Mac Gargan, a.k.a. the Scorpion.
Man, you're possessed with the Scorpion guy. Nobody knows who that is, George.
Yeah, no, that's why I deliberately chose a well-known but not very well-known Spider-Man villain.
Okay.
He teams up with the Hypno Hustler, a less well-known Spider-Man villain. Is defeated soundly by Peter. Peter breaks his legs off, and he dies.
Jeez.
Yeah, the end.
Oh my God.
It was a really rough story.
He didn't get revenge. He get revenge.
He gets to attack. Peter was eating a meatball hoagie, and he smacks it out of his hand.
And Hypno Hustler and
Hypno Hustler runs off with Matt Gargan's girlfriend.
Oh, because they become enemies. Hypno Hustler and Scorpion, and there's a flood, and Hypno Hustler's like, I'm a good swimmer. You can ride on my back. It's like, but I'm your enemy. He goes, no, we have to save each other. So he halfway across the river, the Scorpion stings him.
Can I retroactively change the Hippo Hustler to Frogman?
Okay.
All right, he's Frogman. Equally feeble, actual, real character.
Yes. Halfway across the river, Scorpion
stings.
Smacks him in the head with his big tail, and Frogman goes, "Why? Why'd you do that?" And he says, "Because you stole my girlfriend. It's in my nature." That's it.
Yep. And that's the end.
I couldn't think of anything better than that.
No, I couldn't either. Clearly, I just didn't want to make it about that guy because I'm like, that's the worst violence we've ever seen visited on any person in the show.
We did.
It was some random, possibly mind-controlled protester.
So my story, as you may have guessed, it's about Professor Rustin, because I kept mentioning him.
Oh, that's why you were so clear to mention this guy's name. Yep. For those of you who can't imagine, Professor Rustin was the head of the museum who gets in a fight with J. Jonah Jameson and has a statue dropped on him. Definitely dies, but they decide after the fact he lived because nobody dies in the show.
Mostly through the episodes, they're like, he's doing better. I don't know. He doesn't look good.
He's still asleep. He's still sleeping. We're not going to see him. Nobody goes visit him.
So he's in the hospital. He got a little bit better. And then he went into a coma again. Then he got a little better. Then he went into a coma again. Then he got into a wheelchair. Yes.
Does his hair fall out and he becomes Professor Xavier, leader of the X-Men?
No, come on. I think he was already bald. But
he was balding, certainly.
He gets into a wheelchair.
I think he had a little bit of a lunatic fringe on the side.
Yes, he did. He gets good enough to get into a wheelchair, but he's still in misery. But the nurse says, you have to be positive. Come on.
Oh, shit. You're doing misery, aren't you?
And one day, he's going down the hospital hall in maximum overdrive in his wheelchair.
Oh, no, we're doing all Stephen King.
He tips over, hits his head. And when he goes into a coma. And when he wakes up this time, he finds that when he can touch another person, he gets a flash of that person's future.
Would you call it a Shining?
No, it's called a kind of a dead zone.
Oh, you're right. That's the dead zone.
Come on, George.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I can't deal with maximum overdrive. Weird.
So
know what's weird about this, Tim? He's in a wheelchair, so he can't stand.
That's true. During this part of the story, he cannot stand.
Yep.
Thank you.
He's really mad about it.
Don't get ahead of me. It was then that Peter and Aunt May visited Professor Rustin because he was one of Peter's teachers. Rustin shook May's hand, and he saw that now and in the future, she was committing mail fraud. She had to pay for all the ham and butter sandwiches that Peter ate. She would go down to the blood bank and sell blood all the time at the Salem Blood
Would
Bank.
she sell it to?
No, she sold it to the Salem Blood Bank.
I thought she sold it to Morbius, the living
But
vampire.
it just wasn't enough to pay the bills. So
This is rough.
Professor Rustin hatched a plan. See, he wanted revenge on that Malik guy for what he did to him. And he heard that Malik really had escaped the clutches of his government. And he was...
Mandak.
Oh, he wanted revenge on Mandak for what he did to him. And he heard that Mandak had escaped the clutches of the Kalistani government. And he was living as the caretaker of a big abandoned hotel. And he owned a big dog named Shawshank.
Not Cujo. I'm surprised.
I had to get Shawshank in there somehow.
Okay.
So,
Did Shawshank die and go to a pet cemetery?
yeah.
That's spoilers. That probably really did happen. Sorry.
He told Aunt May, go to that hotel and be pose as a cleaning lady and bring along that little bottle of arsenic you've been holding on to since 1913.
Weird.
So Peter went along because he was suspicious. And they cleaned up that hotel. And Aunt May said, we sure gave this place a shining. It's all shiny now.
And he said, how long have you been here working? And she goes, Peter, we've always been here.
Yes, that's what he said. She managed to get that arsenic and Mandak's coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And they ran off in the morning mist. But she and Peter were confronted by his dog, Shawshank, who seemed to have rabies. And Peter couldn't let on that...
Even more bewildering, he's not Cujo at this point, but yeah.
Peter couldn't let on that he was Spider-Man, but what he did was he became a little fire starter. And he scared the dog off with a torch he made from his favorite sweater that he called Christine. So, all was well. They drove back to Queens, and Aunt May talked Peter into going on a date with her neighbor's daughter because, he really needs to get out. Because May said...
I have a question.
Yeah?
When they went back to Queens, was he carrying anything?
You're getting ahead of me, George.
I'm trying to root all your jokes. Damn it!
May,
it's like there's a lot.
May says, I hate to tell you this,
plot.
Peter, but the kids at school call your underpants the dead zone. You really need a date. So she set Peter up with the neighbor girl named Carrie. And the frat house...
Why is Aunt May privy to that information?
The frat house...
I was hanging out with your high school buddies, and they said your underpants is the dead zone.
The frat house was putting on a party that anyone could be invited to, but unknown to Peter, the frat house only invited Peter so that they could make him the butt of a prank. They had broken into the blood bank. They stole a whole bunch of blood, and they were going to dump it on him and his friend Carrie. And whose blood did they steal that was at the blood bank?
Wait, I want to guess.
Well, a few gallons.
The night shift.
No, it's a few gallons of Aunt May's finest. Remember, she was selling blood.
Oh, okay. I was barking up the wrong tree there.
And in this universe, a band already existed that played at the frat show. They were called Type O Negative. Anyway,
I don't get this part.
Peter and Carrie were named the it couple of the party and brought up on stage. And before they could thank anyone, Aunt May's B-positive blood poured down on the couple. All hell broke loose as Peter was allergic to B-positive blood. He went nuts and did some $300 worth of damage to the frat house before going to the hospital to be treated for his blood allergy by the night shift.
The night shift.
So, Mandak died from arsenic. Peter forgot to take pictures of the blood bath, which would have led because it bled. The arts and entertainment section of the Bugle gave Type O Negative a positive review, and everyone was against Jameson's next idea for an art exhibit. But he took a stand, and he funded an exhibit featuring a statue of Muhammad. There you go. There's no joke at the end. The movie was called Red Rum.
Wow. All right, Tim.
I told you, this episode, everybody rewind, don't listen to this episode. This was our best. Come back next week.
This was our best recap. It was the best episode of Spider-Man.
It was.
I am sorry to say that this is the end of Spider Month is upon us, and it went out with a little bit of a whimper.
No, my story was great.
Oh, that means mine wasn't, you fuck.
You had a great story about the frog and scorpion.
Yep, that was the part you added, you jerk.
So next month is the beginning of the, Halloween spooktacular month called October. And I wanted to do
Wait, what is it called?
October.
Like Ach, like German expression, ACH, like Ach.
Yeah.
October.
I'll go
Are we
with
have to do German horror
Yeah.
films? Ooh, I don't like that's gonna get into some weird scat shit.
No, I want it to be October as in octopus, but there's not very many octopus. Like
No.
there's what
We're just gonna do scary movies,
we're
right?
gonna
That's
do
what the
scary
thing- we're not-
movies.
Do you have the first movie chosen?
There was a. I'm just saying, but yeah, I remember as a kid, there's a movie called Octoman. Did you ever see that?
No.
And as a child, I remember this is terrible, and I'm afraid to even like choose it because I think it must be really bad if it was bad when I was a kid. So next week we're gonna watch
Yeah, it looks pretty bad.
Octoman.
Oh,
No,
we have to
no, we're
watch
not
it.
gonna watch it.
Oh, okay.
Scared you.
What are we gonna watch?
A movie called Equinox. If you watch the trailer, the guy says
Oh, that sounds very familiar. Do I know this movie?
Equinox. Well, I'm going to send you a link because everybody out there, it's on YouTube, and there's a Criterion Collection print on YouTube.
What? I'm noticing
And you know,
it's a 1970 film.
and what it is full
So,
of, George?
I'm
Stop
hoping rampant
motion monsters.
nudity. Oh, that's cool. I mean, well,
And you know who worked on those stop motion monsters?
I'm betting it was not Ray Harryhausen.
It's a man who worked on a little film called Jurassic Park. This is like one of the first
Wait.
movies he worked on.
Phil Tippett?
No, Dennis Murren, a
Oh.
different guy. I know Phil Tippett.
Yeah, he worked in craft services, right?
And two other guys worked on Star Trek after this.
Oh, everybody works.
Star Trek. Star Trek.
All right, so wait, no, it's not. I got to write this down because you fooled me with your
Equinox.
Octoman bullshit. Equinox.
Equinox.
I hope people can hear me turning.
Watch the trailer. It goes
paper.
Equinox.
All right, I'm gonna watch it as soon as we're done here to get a feel for this. Yeah, if you're listening and you were like, do you think Tim said year or Tim said ear? I don't know. Write in with your theory to SETIBIMCO with an E at the end at gmail.com.
We only got a letter from about 300 people that pointed out that you said Kermit Roosevelt died in World War II when sadly he shot himself in Alaska. So I don't mean to.
I think that's because I come from the Berenstain Bear universe where that's what happened.
Berenstain.
It's Mandela. Yeah, because everybody knows. If you look it up, it's the Berenstain. But I know
I see.
it's really Berenstain. And I can't accept that I just learned this wrong as a kid. And so I assume that the more logical excuse is I grew up in an alternate dimension.
All right.
And at some point unwittingly crossed over.
Okay, you get a no prize.
And in that universe, Kermit Roosevelt was not only a Muppet, but he died killing Hitler to end World War II.
Correct. Send us an email at SETIBIMCO with the E at Gmail.
At the end.
You can follow us on Instagram and see all our fun Spider-Man art that was produced this whole month. I made some. George made some.
It's good stuff.
I stole some from the internet.
Ooh, that's bad.
All right, and yeah, like us, and listen to us everywhere, and that's it, right? Is that it?
I think so.
Anything you want to say about
Yeah.
Spider-Man before we go?
Spider-Man,
This
I will miss you.
Spider month, I didn't tell the saddest story.
Oh, let's hear it.
I knew how to tell time because of Spider-Man.
This is sad. All right, let's hear it.
Because
Wait, can I suggest, actually, Tim?
What?
This should be a bonus episode.
no, it's just a short story.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it.
It'll be after the credits.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
I came in the house and my grandparents were there, and I was like 4, and you're like, oh, my grandparents are here. You don't think much of it. And
What's that white crystalline substance you're eating?
they're trying
We call it salt, Timmy.
Yes.
Go sit under the table and eat your hot dog.
Here's some pepper.
And they blew it in your eyes.
And I said, no, look at the clock. The big hand's on 4, the little hand's or the long hand's on 12, the little hand's on 4, and the Spider-Man cartoon's on from the 60s. It was in reruns. And I ran to the TV, turned it to the channel, and it wasn't on. And I was like, what? Well, how could, what? What is happening?
And that's when you learned about daylight savings time and your grandparents didn't change the clock yet?
No, that's just when I learned that the television can change programming at a whim. The whim of whoever's in control. Whoever drives the powers of the government and the economy.
This is what started you on your path to...
Then I came back to my grandparents
to
crying.
malice.
And they're like, why are you crying? You got salt in your eyes? Where's my hard candy?
Oh, come on. The hard candy joke? Damn.
All right. Oh, let's say goodbye. Let's look at
Bye,
scary
everybody.
movies next week. Goodbye, everybody.
See you for Equinox.
This has been a Pity Party Line production.
Party line, it's a party line.
Oh, now I can let this siren go away before I start. I have to open my windows. I can't have the AC on. So
Ooh, I have the. It's brutal.
yeah,
I made the mistake yesterday. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna, I'm in
Tough it
between
out.
big projects. I'm like, I'm gonna walk around Manhattan for a little bit.
Oof.
Mistake. I don't think I recovered all day. I was like, I had a neck ache. I was like, I feel like I baked. It was kind of cool. So as we're recording this, everybody, it's like, I don't know. Is it 100 degrees officially?
Felt like it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's really, really hot. And New York was very empty seeming. It's always pretty wild because like everybody else was being smart and staying home. And I'm like, I'll bake in the sun.
Equinox.